Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of biology. Today we'll talk about the chemical reactions and these reactions inside the living things. So let's move on. Our key concept for today is life depends on chemical reactions. Yes, we have two main ideas. Number one, bonds break and form during chemical reactions. Number two, chemical reactions release or absorb energy. This is what we will study. So let's move on. The bonds break and form during a chemical reaction. Plant cells make cellulose by linking simple sugars together, as we mentioned before. The plant and the animal cells, they break down these sugars to get the usable energy through the process of cellular respiration. All the cells in your body, they build the protein molecules by bonding amino acids together. These are all chemical reactions that take place inside the living things. So what is a chemical reaction? A chemical reaction, this is what happens in a chemical reaction, changes substances into different substances by breaking and forming chemical bonds. So what happened during a chemical reaction? Substances change into different ones by breaking and forming chemical bonds. Reactants, products, and the bond energy. Your cells need the oxygen molecules that you breathe in through your lungs. The oxygen plays a part in a series of chemical reactions that provides usable energy in your cells. Actually, for the mitochondria in your cells to break down the food through the process of photosynthesis, it needs oxygen. These reactions break down the simple sugars like glucose, C6H12O6. The process uses oxygen and the glucose, and the result is carbon dioxide and the water vapor and the usable energy that your body needs. Oxygen and the glucose, they are the reactants. So what are reactants? Actually, reactants are the substances that are changed during a chemical reaction. These are the ones that are used in the chemical reactions. Carbon dioxide and water, these are the products. So what is the meaning of the word products? These are the new substances, the substances made by a chemical reaction. What's a chemical equation? This is chemical equations. They are used to show what happens during the reaction, what happens to the reactants in order to get the products in a chemical reaction. The overall equation for the process that it changes oxygen and the glucose into carbon dioxide and water, here is the chemical equation. 6 oxygen molecules plus C6H12O6, this is glucose. These are called the reactants. And this is the direction of the reaction. It gives 6 carbon dioxide molecules and 6 water molecules. These are called products. The reactants are on the left side of the equation, while the products are on the right side of the equation. This process, which is called the cellular respiration, as we studied before, makes the carbon dioxide and the water vapor that you breathe out of your body. But for the carbon dioxide and water to be made, bonds must be broken first in the reactants, and the new bonds must form between the products. What causes the bond in oxygen and the glucose molecules to break? And what happens when new bonds form in carbon dioxide and water? This is an interesting part. First, energy is added. Why? To break the bonds between the molecules of oxygen and the glucose. This energy is called bond energy. Bond energy, this is the amount of energy that will break a bond between two atoms. So this is the energy needed to break the bond between two atoms in a molecule. The bonds between different types of atoms have different bond energies. Yes, this is for sure. A certain amount of energy is needed to break bonds in an oxygen molecule, while a different amount of energy is needed to break the bonds in a glucose molecule, for example. So different types of atoms, they have different bond energies. So they need different amount of energy to break the bond between different atoms. Energy is released when bonds form. Energy is released when bonds form, such as when molecules of water and the carbon dioxide are made. When a bond forms, the amount of energy released is equal to, this is very important, the amount of energy that breaks the same amount. So when you add bond energy, to break the bond between two atoms, you need the same amount of energy, or the same amount of energy will be released when the bond forms. Again, when a bond forms, the amount of energy released is equal to the amount of energy that breaks the same bond. For example, energy is released when hydrogen and oxygen atoms bond together to make water molecules. The same amount of energy is needed to break apart a water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen back again. Then what about chemical equilibrium? Chemical equilibrium, this is very important. Some reactions go from reactants to products until the reactants are used up, till the reactants are finished or consumed. However, many reactions in living things, they are what? They are reversible, means they work in both directions. They move in both directions at the same time. Reversible reactions tend to go in one direction or the other, depending on the concentrations of reactants and the products. So these reversible reactions, they are like the reactions, or most reactions in the living things, they move in both directions. So what controls the equilibrium? Is it in the direction of the products or the direction of the reactants? It depends on the concentration of both the products and the reactants. For example, a reversible reaction lets the blood carry carbon dioxide to expel it out of your body. Carbon dioxide reacts with the water in the blood. The blood, you remember the plasma? Carbon dioxide reacts with water in the blood to form a compound called carbonic acid, H2CO3, carbonic acid. So the carbon dioxide reacts with the water in the blood to form carbonic acid. Your body needs this reaction. Why? To get rid of the carbon dioxide waste from your cells. Okay, this is great. So this is in the direction of the products. The arrows show that the reaction goes in both directions. Then what? When carbon dioxide concentration is high, as it is around your cells, in this case, the reaction moves toward the right, toward the products, and carbonic acid forms. This is around your cells. Then when the blood carries this carbonic acid to your lungs, what happens next? In your lungs, the carbon dioxide concentration is low. In this case, the reaction goes to the other direction, to the left direction, to the direction of the reactants. And the carbonic acid breaks down into water and the carbon dioxide. Then what? When a reaction takes place at an equal rate in both directions, the reactants and the products concentrations stay the same. This is called the chemical equilibrium, means both the sides are equal to each other or have equal concentrations. When a reaction takes place, we are talking about a reversible reaction that takes place at an equal rate in both the directions. In this case, the reactants and the products concentrations, they stay the same. This is called the chemical equilibrium. Equilibrium is reached when both the reactants and the products are made at the same rate. So they have the same concentrations. Then we will talk about the chemical reactions that release or absorb energy. All chemical reactions involve changes in energy. Yes, this is agreed. Energy that is added to reactants breaks their chemical bonds. When new bonds form in the products, the energy is released back. During a chemical reaction, energy is both absorbed and released. Let's see. Some chemical reactions release more energy than they absorb. Some chemical reactions release more energy than they absorb. Other chemical reactions actually absorb more energy than they release. So, releasing or absorbing energy during a chemical reaction depends on the bond energy. Let's see how. First, we have a term called activation energy. What's activation energy? This is the amount of energy that needs to be absorbed for a chemical reaction to start. So to start any chemical reaction, first we need to add some energy. This energy is called the activation energy. Activation energy is like the energy you would need to push a rock up a hill. So when you are pushing the rock up a hill, you need only energy to push it up. Then what? Once the rock is at the top of the hill, it rolls down to the other side by itself, the same as the activation energy. This energy needs to be added or absorbed for a chemical reaction only to start. Then it will continue by itself. This is the activation energy. The reaction process, it depends on the activation energy first. We have two types of reactions here. We have an exothermic chemical reaction, exothermic chemical reaction. Exo from the word exit or outside. So these reactions releases more energy than it absorbs. So in the exothermic reaction, the reaction is exothermic when the products have, listen to this part carefully, we have the reactants and we have the products. This is a chemical reaction. So when the products have lower bond energy than the reactants, so the rest is released. This is the exothermic reaction. The difference in bond energy between the reactants and the products, this is the excess energy is given off as heat or light. Like what? Actually, some animals such as the squids or the fireflies, as you can see, they give off light that comes from exothermic reactions. It releases light as energy, as the excess energy, as you can see the squids and the fireflies. Then the second type of chemical reactions, or also we are still in the exothermic reactions, the process that uses glucose, yes, this is very important, and oxygen to provide the usable energy for our cells, which is called the cellular respiration. This is also exothermic chemical reaction. The cellular respiration also releases heat that keeps your body warm. The reactants, located this graph, these are the reactants, the total energy added, then the products, they have lower bond energy, as you can see. So the excess energy is released. This is what keeps our body warm. Then the second type of reactions, this is the endothermic chemical reaction. An endothermic chemical reaction, so it absorbs more energy than it releases. So the products have higher bond energy than the reactants. In this case, the energy must be absorbed or added to make this difference. Again, an endothermic chemical reaction. We have the products, the reactants, and the products. Actually, the products have higher bond energy. Bond energy. So in this case, it needs to absorb more energy. So this is the endothermic chemical reaction. Energy must be absorbed to make the difference. Like what? One of the most important processes for life on Earth. This is photosynthesis. It's endothermic chemical reaction. Why? During photosynthesis, the plants absorb energy from sunlight and use that energy to make simple sugars, the glucose, and the complex carbohydrates like starch. So the bond energy or the energy of the reactants, it is more then, or the bond energy of the products, it releases more energy. So the total energy released, this is less. So it absorbs more energy than it released. The difference in its energy absorbed. Can you see? This is the energy absorbed. So this is an endothermic chemical reaction. I hope you understood this part. See you in the next episode. Thank you guys and goodbye.